Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making the actual best chocolate chip cookies. This might be a little bit controversial, but the best chocolate chip cookies are not made with softened butter. They are not made with cold butter. They are made with melted butter. This is what's going to give you the best, chewiest results and the best chocolate chip cookies, which is what we're aiming for here today. You will need 1 cup of unsalted butter for this recipe. That's 226 grams. Kind of looks like a lot on this plate here because I've cut it up into pieces, but this is just 1 cup. And I cut it into pieces because we're taking it over to the microwave to melt it. And it's just going to help it melt a little faster and a little more evenly this way. If you don't have a microwave, just do this on a double boiler. Let's take this over to the microwave, and I like to heat it in like 20-25 second intervals, just giving it a little stir in between. That way it doesn't explode in our microwave. Okay, so once your butter is melted, or at least mostly melted, give it a stir until all of the pieces are completely melted, and then we have to wait a little bit. If we continue with this recipe and add sugar to a recipe where the butter is still warm, you're going to melt the sugar and your cookies will spread all over your baking sheet. You'll have a greasy dough. It'll be a bad time. We are going to have a little patience and wait usually about 10 minutes until the butter is no longer warm to the touch. You'll just feel the bottom of the bowl, and so long as it isn't warm to the touch, you are good to continue with the recipe. Once your butter is no longer warm to the touch, this has been about 10 minutes, we can go ahead with the rest of our recipe. And in case you're wondering, if your butter does start to re-solidify a bit, that is okay. You can move forward with that. Your cookies will probably just be a little bit thicker, which is fine. Let's talk sugar. We are starting this recipe with, the sugar part of this recipe, with 1 1/4 cups of firmly packed brown sugar. That is 250 grams for you metric users, which I actually highly recommend everyone out there use a kitchen scale for measuring. It's going to give you better results. It's the best way to level up your baking. So brown sugar, you can use all light brown sugar, or you can use a mix of light and dark brown sugar. Personally, highly recommend using a blend of both. If you don't have both on hand, just use light, that'll be fine. But by using a blend, we get a richer flavor. I don't like to use all dark brown sugar because it can make the cookie a little bit too rich, but this blend works very, very well. We're not completely ignoring the granulated sugar. We're going to use 1/2 cup or 100 grams of granulated sugar. You get my scale zeroed out here. Again, kitchen scale, one of the best ways to get consistent results with baking. Highly recommend it. We'll stir the sugar and butter together until everything is nicely combined. Break up any clumps from the brown sugar. By firmly packing the brown sugar, whether you are measuring it with a measuring cup or with a scale, that helps break up a lot of the clumps before you have to stir them into your butter. So I recommend it regardless of which measuring system you're using. No maple syrup in this recipe. This is not the worst chocolate chip cookie recipe that those of you who have been following me for a while have made. That one is my favorite, but this recipe has lived on my site for years now, and a lot of people have asked for me to make a video of it, so today we're making a video of the best chocolate chip cookie recipe, which is second best to the worst chocolate chip cookie recipe. If you've made that one, you know what I'm talking about. I'll link to it in the description. For the eggs, you'll need 1 large egg. Go ahead and crack this. Always crack it into a separate dish just in case there's shells or anything like that. And we'll add this to our mixing bowl. And we're also going to do 1 egg yolk. So you can discard that extra egg white, or you can, save it to use in another recipe like meringues or macarons. We just go ahead and pass that yolk back and forth in the shell till all of the white falls out. Some of it doesn't want to go. We use this egg yolk and not the extra white because it helps make the cookie more tender and chewy and less cakey. Whoops, I was going to add the wrong part to the dough. That would have been bad. For the vanilla, we're going to be adding 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, preferably a pure vanilla extract. This is my homemade vanilla. All those glorious vanilla bean flecks. It smells so good. Another note about the eggs while I am stirring everything together. Do not use cold eggs for this recipe. If you use cold eggs with that warm butter, you're going to end up shocking the butter, and things are not going to combine as well as we want them to. So room temperature eggs, and if you don't have room temperature eggs, set them in a bowl of warm water for like 15 minutes, then dry them off really well and they should be good to go. They can come to room temperature while your butter is cooling. All right, once this is nicely combined, we're actually going to slide it out of the way, and we need a separate bowl for our dry ingredients. Just a medium-sized bowl will work just fine here. We're using all-purpose flour for today's recipe. You will need 2 3/4 cup of this. Oh, it would be helpful if I zeroed my scale first. There we go. And that is 350 grams for my fellow scale users. We're also going to be using one of my favorite secret ingredients for cookies, cornstarch. If you're in the UK, you'll probably call it corn flour. You need 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. This is another ingredient that I love using in my cookies because it helps make them, or helps keep them nice and tender and chewy without making them cakey. Next is our baking soda, and you will need just 1 teaspoon of baking soda. There's no baking powder in this recipe. That is intentional. And for our salt, we're going to be using just table salt today. I'm going to be using 1 teaspoon of table salt. Now we'll whisk these ingredients together, get everything nicely combined. You want that cornstarch, salt, baking soda, all well distributed through your dry ingredients. And we will gradually, we don't need our scale anymore, we'll gradually fold these into our wet ingredients that have been waiting patiently for us. Do this in like 3 or 4 parts. It's better not to add all of the dry ingredients at once. It can be very difficult to combine. Another thing I love about this recipe is there is no mixer needed. You can do it all by hand. This dough smells so good. Anyone who has found my worst chocolate chip cookies to be too sweet usually really loves this recipe. They are a little bit less sweet than that version. Let's get that last bit of flour absorbed. All right, chocolate chips. This is a chocolate chip cookie recipe, so I am using chocolate chips, but what I really love to do sometimes is chop up a semi-sweet baking bar, throw that in. It's even better, even a little more gourmet. Chocolate chip cookie recipe though, we'll just talk chocolate chips today. This is 1 3/4 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. That's 300 grams. We'll stir these into the dough until the chocolate chips are well distributed. If you're wondering about these guys I have sitting right here, we're going to save these for the end so that they're just going to make our cookies look extra special. These are just extra chocolate chips I have set aside. I love a good chocolate chip cookie dough. Looks so beautiful. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you and say I've never skipped chilling the cookie dough, but for best results, you really should chill this cookie dough for at least 30 minutes in the refrigerator. Chilling is going to help develop the flavor a little bit. If your butter was maybe a smidge warmer than it should be, or your kitchen's a little bit warmer, it's also going to help keep your cookies from spreading too much. And you can chill them longer for 30 minutes as well. These can be made a couple days in advance. Sometimes the dough gets a little firm though, and you need to let it sit out so you can scoop it. Cover your dough always, otherwise it'll dry out. And let's take this over to the fridge and I'll see you in 30 minutes. All right, it's been about 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes. About 15 minutes ago, I started preheating my oven. You'll want to do the same before you pull your cookie dough out of the fridge. Get it preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's start scooping our cookies. Now I'm going to be using my 1.5 tablespoon scoop. I love this cookie scoop, but I'm going to be scooping closer to 2 tablespoons of dough per cookie. That just gives me the size I prefer. I'll get a weight on these. I actually don't have one right now. Go ahead and do a rounded scoop. Like I said, that's a little closer to 2 tablespoons. These cookies, you can just drop them on the baking sheet if you want, but to make them look a little more uniform, I like to just roll them into neat little balls, just roll them between my palms. You could just drop them if you're not trying to impress anyone. With my worst chocolate chip cookies, sometimes I will make the cookies a little more egg-shaped. You could certainly do that here, but I usually just make them round. A little more dough for this one. We'll do 2 taller ones. Sometimes you run the risk of them toppling over and just being a little lopsided that way. All right, these are going into the center rack of your 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. They're going to bake for about 10 to 11 minutes. When they're finished baking, the edges should be a very, very light golden, and the centers can still look a little bit underdone. That's actually ideal for a nice chewy cookie. Okay. Now moving quickly here are 2 things I like to do when the cookies come out of the oven. First, grab a pair of spoons. This is totally extra, but what I like to do is if the cookies aren't completely round, I just like to use the spoons to round them and make them look nice and uniform. Is this going to change how they taste? Absolutely not, but I'm just kind of a perfectionist when it comes to my cookies. That's probably why I do this for a living, actually. All right, besides that, remember those chocolate chips we talked about earlier? Grab these. You need to add these within like 1 or 2 minutes of the cookies coming out of the oven. We're just going to gently nestle some additional chocolate chips to the top of each cookie. First of all, extra chocolate, that is a plus, but also it just really makes the cookies look nice. These chips are going to, they're not exactly going to melt, but they're going to become really, really soft and melty so that you can't even touch them. But once the cookies have cooled completely, they will be re-solidified as well, and you'll be able to like stack the cookies and everything. They just look a lot, my goodness, you guys have me distracted. These just look a lot prettier with the extra chips on them. But you do have to move quickly because the cookies will start to set up pretty fast. Now, if you got the cookies out at the right time when you had a very, very light browning around the edges, the centers looked a little bit undone or underdone, let them cool on the baking sheet completely. This will let the centers finish baking. It's going to keep your cookies soft and chewy for days. And that is how you make not the worst, but the best chocolate chip cookies. I'm really excited for you to try this recipe. It already has a ton of really good reviews, so I feel pretty confident about it, but please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. And leave a comment on my website. That's actually very helpful to me. I always link to that in the description, so thanks for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Oh, it's still a little warm. That's when they're the best. Yep, that is the best, but you should also try the worst. I know that's a little bit popular. And at this point, your oven should be preheated. I have a hairband on.
It looks like a bracelet.
Oh, there's design to actually. I don't know why I was moving that. There's no reason. And action.
Your hairbands are on.
Oh! Ah, my goodness. New studio, same me.